Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Monday morning, y'all. Hope everybody's doing well. Oh, man, camera got knocked around, everything else. One of these days, I'll figure out how to do this. Oh, man, as you can see by Chaos Central back here, I'm Still working on stuff. I've got the top of the CNC cleared though, finally. Uh, been doing a lot of surfacing of material. Um, and in fact, we'll go ahead and we'll get to this question right now. Sherry Peterson is asking, is it possible to level the top of my wood piece? If you mean using the bit to kind of surface the top, it's very possible. I've been doing a lot of that lately. And in fact, one of my first videos of the new year is going to be on that topic. I've been doing a lot of it. And I got to tell you, without spoiling the video that's coming up, yes, a planer is, or thicknesser for those of you across the pond, is much faster, especially if you have a lot to do. Um, uh, but where the CNC shines is if you have highly figured woods where grain going in different directions, the CNC is far superior to a planer because with a planer slash thicknesser, you have to watch which direction your grain is going so that as the blades cut into the surface of the material, the grain is more or less running downhill away from that cut. Because if it's running uphill towards that cut, the blade will actually cut into the material and get underneath one of those layers in between the annular rings and rip it out. That gives you a lot of pits and divots and what have you. Well, with real curly grain or burl wood or any kind of a figure that may have loose knots or loose pieces in there, uh, the planer will just tear it up. But the CNC, because it's got that radial cutting action, will slice it off at the surface. And I get a far superior surface surfacing with the CNC. Uh, the short version, Sherry, would be to uh, draw a rectangle vector, the roughly the size of the piece that you're going to be surfacing, and do a pocket cut for a real shallow depth. Pocket out that rectangle or that shape around your piece of material, and very thin cuts. Make one pass, check it, see how it looks. If you need to go more, reset your Z0 and do more. Again, that's going to be one of the first videos. It'll probably be the second video that comes out in the new year. I'm in the process of shooting video for those now. But the short answer to the long question is yes, you can do that if that's what you meant by leveling the wood. You also have to take into consideration your mounting technique. There are some things to watch out for, but I'm going to cover that in the video when it comes out. So I hope that answers your question on that. Um, I know I just kind of dove into it, but that sparked several things right from the get-go. But today, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go step back to the basics a little bit because I tend to forget that new people get into CNC work every day. And so when you go hit my catalog of videos, there are some videos that are 5, 6, 7 years old now that I haven't revisited, and maybe some things have changed, maybe they haven't. And as I have gotten better with some of my techniques in using the CNC router, I have changed some of my work methods. And so a few things in those older videos are obsolete. as new versions of the software has come out. And so the process has changed a little bit. But some things haven't changed. And so I never really felt the need to go back and revisit them. But I can see now that I'm going to need to do it. Uh, uh, this little segment I'm going to do up here up front is a direct answer to a question by a gentleman by the name of Joe Lazara, who is fairly new to CNC. And he's been told a few things that have confused him. And his question is, and I wish there was a way I could put this up on screen, but I can't. His question is, it was on a older video I did. It was part 2 in my series on script fonts. And that's where we got into kerning, spacing the letters, and then calculating toolpaths. Some of this has changed in the newer version, and this is a video I'm going to revisit, but his question, the answer has not changed. He says, I have a question about something you did in the video. I got a little bit confused with solid lines or dotted lines for a vector. At about 18 minutes into this particular video, all of the letters in some text I was using were dashed lines. Then I grouped them and turned them into solid lines. Then I went into the toolpath and I set it up. But his question is, don't the letters or the text have to be dotted lines and not solid? He was told that when the line is solid, you have to convert to curves and then they are a vector. Okay, that's a little bit of misinformation, a little bit of fact, and a little bit of confusion. Let me go ahead and screen share here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, most of you already know this, but if you're new, maybe you don't. Okay, I have here just some simple text, just my name in a Times New Roman font. This isn't even a script text, but in this case, it doesn't matter. And as you can see, when I select it, they are solid pink lines. This is indicating that this is either a text object or it is curves, separate vectors that have been grouped. And there is a difference. There's a big difference between the two. He says in his question, I was told that when the line is solid, you have to go to convert to curves, and then they are a vector. No, that is incorrect. These are vectors right now, even though they are solid lines. What this indicates is that this is a text object, and it is treated as such. It is basically one object. And the advantage of having a text object over separate vectors is you can use these tools up here to edit text spacing and curve, or wrap it along a curve. And when it's a text object, you can do this. If you do convert it to curves, and you can, if you do convert it to curves, I'll go ahead and right click, convert to curves. Now they are separate vectors. They are not, these can all be edited. It's no longer a text object. Okay. Now I can come back up here, edit, undo, convert to curves, or I can just hit Control Z to undo it. But it will still V-carve or cut out the exact same way as if you do convert it to curves. So what I'm getting at is whoever told you that you had to convert it to curves in order to carve it, that is incorrect. It will carve just the same. Let's go ahead and do a V-carve toolpath, do a flat depth real quick, and I'll do a 90-degree. No, don't update it yet. I forgot that I did that. Go ahead and do a 90-degree. I won't do use any clearance tools. I'll just then change the tool path color to something you can see and then preview it. So you can see right here that it will carve exactly the same way as if you do convert it to curves. Okay? That's my point in all this. So now when you get into grouped vectors, that's a different subject. Now, come on, there we go. This is a text object now because I just came out of my text window and there it is. It's done. If I right click and convert to curves, then later on, so I have all these separate vectors now. Then later on, I want to group all of these just to make it easier to select them. I don't have to go in and select all 4 individually. And then remember on the A, there's an inside and an outside vector. If I want to make them easier to select, I'll just select them all and then either type the letter G on my keyboard or come over here to group selected objects. They both do exactly the same thing. We're back to solid pink lines again, indicating that these are grouped. It's not treated as a single text object anymore. It's still separate vectors. They've just been grouped. So if I need to go in and edit one of these to reduce the number of nodes or something like that, I would have to ungroup them in order to edit them. So that is the difference. No, you do not have to ungroup these or convert to curves to make them separate vectors. The only time you need to do that is if you need to edit one character, one single character. Because let me, just for the sake of avoiding confusion, let me undo that group and then undo the convert to curve. So I'm back to a text object. If I select any one of these individual characters, it selects all of the text. So I can't edit this M. I can't, if I decide I want to make that M bigger or flip the letter M sideways for some reason, or even rotate it, I can't do that until I separate these characters into individual vectors. And that's when convert to curves comes in. Now I can go ahead and do that. So I see another question out here. Steve Rowe asks, any tips on how to rotate a vector by a specific number of degrees? Okay, let's get into that using this. I just converted all of these to curves, and let's rotate that letter M just slightly. And we'll do that by coming over here to rotate selected objects. And you'll notice this round bullseye here in the center. This is the rotation point. By default, it's going to be in the center. So if I rotate this letter M, it's going to rotate based on the center of the character. And what I need to do is come down here and make sure type of rotation, relative or absolute. Now, do we want to rotate it relative to where it is now? Or do we want to do an absolute rotation? Meaning, um, just if I want to rotate it 45 degrees, just absolute, I would click on that and go with an angle of 45 degrees and click apply. If I didn't want to go 45 degrees, Control Z, let's say I want to do, okay, 12.5 degrees, just to throw in an oddball. Apply. There it is right there. Now let me Control Z and we'll do a relative shift of 12.5, and it's probably not going to be much different. Apply. No, it's not. It's not different at all in this case. All right. Now let me Control Z that, and I'll close it. Select it again, just because I forgot to do something. Let's go in here and we'll do a again an absolute type of rotation, but I'm going to move my rotation axis. So what I'll do is I'll just put my cursor over that bullseye up there in the center. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to bring it up here to the top corner. I just click and drag it up. So now when this rotates, it's not going to spin from the center. It's going to rotate based on this corner. So now let's go into a 12.5 degrees, zoom out a little bit because I don't know what this is going to do. It's probably going to cross over the A. And, oh, come on, 12.5 and apply. Okay, it's not going to do it. Must be because it would rotate it off of the material. Let's see if it'll do it relative. 5. Okay, it did do that. All right. So relative to where it was positioned, but it rotated based on this rotation axis here. Control Z. Let's drag that down over to here. And I want it to go the other direction. So let's do a negative 12.5 degrees and apply. And it went that direction. Okay. You see what I'm getting at there, Steve? So, aha, never used the icon, was always dragging the black handle to rotate. Yes, I mean, and you know, um, sometimes the sometimes if you have to have a specific angle, then this works great. I find more often than not, unless I'm trying to match something perfectly, or there is a serious need for it to be 100% right on that angle, just whatever looks good is good enough. I mean, not always, but I mean, can you look at that and tell me that's 12.5 degrees negative? I sure can't. So, I mean, if you've got a calibrated eyeball like that, then, you know, cool. Okay, one last thing on this subject here is that in my case, I have converted this text object to curves. There isn't any way that I know of so far to convert it back to a text object from converting to curves. The only way I know how to do that is to go back through and Control Z, undo convert to curves. So just a little pointer based on experience here. And I've had to start from scratch a couple of times because I didn't do this. If you think that you're going to, if you think there's even the remotest possibility that you may have to go in and modify your text after you've done other work on it, do yourself a favor and use layers to your advantage. And all I do is select the text, right click, copy to layer, new layer. Then I call it original text. I'll change the drawing color just slightly. I'll make it a blue, and then turn off layer is visible and layer is active. Click OK. Now, if I go up here into my layer manager, I have my original text on a separate layer. I can turn it on, make it the active layer, shut off layer 1, and there is my original text as a text object. Now, go back into layer 1, turn that off. Now, if I come along and convert this to curves and do a bunch of other work, then decide I have made a mistake with this text and I need to get back in and do some kerning or do something else, change the font maybe, I don't have to start from scratch. What I can do is, see, these are converted to curves. Yeah, yes, I can. What I can do now, if I need to just get rid of that, select them all, delete, go back into my original text layer and make it the active layer, select, right click, copy to layer, layer 1, then go back into layer 1, and I have my text object back. Now I can do whatever editing I needed to do, go in, change fonts, let that load up, takes a while. And there we go. Now I have my text back as a text object in a different font. And I can get in and do a little bit of kerning here. Let's spread those apart. There we go. So all is not lost. Now, there have been cases where I have done a project, got about halfway through the project. I have done a lot of work. I've added vectors out here. I've added, other artwork and getting ready to calculate toolpaths, then discover I need to go back in and change this text for some reason. Having that layer with the original text and original text object has saved my bacon several times. That way I don't have to start from scratch, especially if you've done a lot of editing. So I hope that answers Joe's question that in a nutshell, no, you do not have to convert it to curves. You can, but it's not necessary. So, okay, a lot of discussion out here about spoil boards, etc. And okay, Steve said he needed a specific angle, 5 degrees. Yeah, then that's the way to do it. Go into that rotate and try both. See if there's a difference between absolute or relative. And also remember that you can go positive in your degrees or you can go negative. So if it turns the wrong way, you can go, Control Z to undo what you did and then put in a negative symbol or take away a negative symbol, whichever. So let's see, we've got some other questions here. Let's see here. Michael Guerrier says, hi, when using two or more different bits on a single project, how are you going to stop the machine so you can change to the next bit? Thanks. Okay, well, I'll show you. And this is, again, let's go ahead and get into screen share. And let's V-carve this. And I've got my, let's select a smaller bit than this, just so, no, I don't want to update my database. Stop asking me. My 15 degree, let's try that one. Okay. And then I'll use a clearance tool. I'll use a 1/8 inch end mill. No. Let's use that one. Select. So I have two bits. And I'll calculate, reset the preview. Now, if you'll notice, let me get rid of this one. This was the first one that I made. Delete this. If you notice, that created two separate tool paths. Okay, Michael? One, if you look at the little bubble that pops up, that uses my 1/8 inch end mill, and this one uses my 15 degree V bit. So your question is, how do you stop the machine so you can change to the next bit? When you calculate the tool paths, let's go into save tool path here. You have choices to make here, Michael. One of them is the selected tool path. Now you see I've got VCarve 2 clear that uses my 1/8 inch bit. That is selected. It's in blue. And that is the tool path that's going to be saved right here. Okay. So I would save that tool path. That's one piece of G code. Then I would come along and save toolpath 2. That uses my 15 degree V bit. Save that toolpath as a separate piece of G code. That's how I do it. You can put all of the toolpaths that use the same bit into the same G code and run those all at once, usually, not always, and then save the other type of bit, all of the toolpaths that use that other type of bit, as a separate piece of G code. That's what I do. I do that because that way I'm in control of how long this carve is going to take. If it's a complex pattern and I've got 5 different bits I'm going to use because there is 3D artwork that'll use 2 different bits, and then a 3D clearing toolpath that's going to use another bit, and then a pocket and something else, like a V carving or what have you. If you if you if you put all of those toolpaths into one piece of G code, you're more or less trapped depending upon your controller software. Most controller software has a way for you to stop and then later on come pick up from where you left off. Not all, but most do. I would say 99% of them do. I can only think of one that didn't, and it may now allow you to do that. But anyway, by saving separate G code files, I'm in control of when I run that. So I can come out and run my 3D carving, then look up, it's time for dinner, just, turn off the monitor, shut down the CNC, go in the house, come back out a little bit later on, or maybe wait until tomorrow, and then finish running the G code for that project. Now, if you come over here and you see visible tool paths to one file, it says no visible tool paths. What this means is a check mark in the two blanks. Now I've got both of them selected, and now we've got a warning up here. The geometry of the tools are different. This is an error. This is a warning. And you'll notice my Save Tool Paths is grayed out. That's because the post processor I'm using does not support an automatic tool changer. Now, I don't want to confuse this, okay? You don't, strictly speaking, have to have a physical automatic tool changer on your machine to use an automatic tool changer post processor. What that'll do if you're using a post processor that supports an automatic tool changer is it will stop the program when it's done using, for instance, this VCarve, the 1/8 inch bit. It'll stop the program and wait for you to do a tool change. Then you tell it you have done the tool change and then go. Okay. Steve Rowe says, no ATC here, but I usually put multiple tool paths into the same G code unless I have something that has need for a fit check. Yes. I tend to not put them all in the same G code, mainly because I know me. If there's a way I can make a mistake, I will do it. So by putting all of the tool paths that need a 1/8 inch end mill into one piece of G code, I'll do that. If there's a way I can put all of the 1/4 inch end mill tool paths into one G code, I'll do that, with one exception, and I'll get into that in a minute. If there's a way for me to put both of those into one G code and make a mistake, I will do it. That's just what it's like to be me. I will forget to change bits. I will put the wrong bit in first, thinking I need the 1/4 inch when I actually need the 1/8 inch, or I will make a mistake. I know me. So this is one of those safeguards that I put into place to protect me from myself, basically. So, and to each their own. I know people who do use an ATC post processor and do manual bit changes, and they're absolutely happy with it. Steve Rowe apparently being one of them, and that's great. It's all down to your comfort level. But the answer to there isn't a single answer to Michael's question. It's just basically your comfort levels. If you're comfortable with putting all of them into one single piece of G code and your controller will allow for manual tool changes, and there is an ATC post processor for your controller, for your machine, then by all means, be my guest. I don't do it that way because I know me. I want more control over what is running and when it's running. So, you know, uh, but I know a lot of people sweat the tool change. And to be fair, I did too when I was first starting out. But it's not as big of a deal as one would think it is. And once you get used to it, it's become second nature. It really does. Um, it's it's not that big of a deal as you get into it. Okay. I hope that answered that question. Let's see. Bruno Fonseca. Did I just butcher your name? I apologize if I did. Building a Queen Bee Pro CNC at the moment, 1500 by 1500 millimeter. How to reduce x-axis flex on such a long aluminum beam. It comes down to the size of that beam. Let me get off of screen sharing here. If you look at the Avid CNC, that is a single piece of aluminum extrusion there. But it's made by, oh, what is the name of that company? I can't remember the name of the company now. Somebody out there in the chat, help me. I can't remember the name of the company that makes this extrusion. 80-20, I believe it is. 80-20. Thank you, Steve. You just saved my bacon. I appreciate it. It is their Series 40 extrusion, but it's also one of their beefy extrusion, and it's down to wall thickness of the extrusion. Without buying a new piece of thicker extrusion, I really don't know what to tell you. And when I say this thing is beefy, I mean it is beefy. This piece alone is 47 pounds. Let me see what that is in kilograms here. That's 21 and a third, 21.3 kilograms. So it's beefy, it's strong, and there is no flex in this son of a gun. So I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but about the only way you can remove flex in the center of such a long aluminum beam is to get thicker extrusion. And like I say, I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but that's the only way I can think of. I don't know if there is any way of stiffening it from the outside, maybe a doubler, or I don't know anything about the extrusion that's used on that, so I don't know how rigid it is. But something to remember is these home hobby machines were designed with the home hobby in mind. They were never meant to be production machines or even production level machines. Even this Avid CNC, although it is very high quality, this is not an industrial CNC router. Industrial CNC routers are welded steel plate that are pushing 10, 15, and 20 horsepower spindles with servos instead of stepper motors and things of that nature. It's a completely different realm. So, although this is a professional grade CNC router, it's not an industrial router. And home hobby CNCs were just not made for that. Colorado Woodworking says, my shop saber is a steel beam. Yes, your shop saber is an industrial CNC. Shop saber, shop sabers, for those of you who can speak, are darn good machines. They are very good machines, but it's another level. This is going from your Ford F-100 to a Caterpillar 20-yard dump truck. Completely different class. And yeah, Steve Rose says, not to mention a commercial price point. Exactly. So add a center support post. Yeah, that'll work. Let's see. Would T-nutting steel plate to extrusion help? It very well could if there's clearance, if there's room for it. But all of the linear bearings and everything has to be able to clear it. And you'd be surprised at how tight some of these tolerances are, even on home hobby CNCs. So what I was getting at with the extrusion and home hobby versus industrial is that these were not designed for heavy loads. I mean, a lot of these machines out there are designed for trim routers. So even the Porter Cable 890 series motor I had on my Gatton CNC is too big for a lot of these machines. It just, it was 11 pounds, and the structure just wasn't strong enough to move that much weight around. They weren't designed for it. They're made for something like a Bosch Colt or a small Makita, and that's what they're designed to use. So you're not going to get the same performance as a bigger, stronger, more robust machine. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad machine. It doesn't mean that at all. I mean, I ran my Gatton CNC for 4 years, and then for 2 years before that, I ran the shoestring budget CNC, and they were made out of plywood. And I never had an issue with flex because I had to learn the capability of the machine and the capacity of the machine and work within those capabilities. And it wasn't an issue. Then again, I'm a home hobbyist. I'm not trying to put out 1,000 parts a week. So, there's give and take on everything. So if this is mainly for a business, then you might want to look at a more robust machine. If this is for hobby that may evolve into a business, I will not try to talk you out of that CNC router, because I believe that any CNC router is going to give you experience with it. And when you're brand new, that's what you need. Even one of the little 3018s, it's a CNC router that's going to give you experience. You're going to need to learn the CAD CAM software, the controller software, how to mount material, how to run material. So, any machine that you can get that experience with is a good thing. And there's no law that says you can only have one. And maybe you start with that. What was it, a queen bee or a work bee? Maybe you start with that one and then you move up to something else and eventually get the shop saber like Colorado Woodworking has. You know, so no F100 since the early 70s. Age reference again? Well, that's just me. You know, that's just me. No F100 since the early 50s. Uh, I don't want to break your heart, but I remember the F1. I wasn't around when that was still a model. I wasn't born yet when that was brand new, but I remember the F1s. Okay, get out of that. Colorado Woodworking, what is your best solution to add a rounded perimeter at the bottom of a pocket? I'm guessing you mean a radius at the bottom around the outside. Uh, Two ways. Well, three ways actually. If you have V-carve, a ball nose end mill, or a bowl bit, that's two ways. If you have a spire, 3D model it and use a tapered ball nose. Having said that, 3D model is always going to take longer to cut. What in that case, in fact, I need to get a bowl bit ordered. The only reason I don't have one ordered now is it's a time of year, and we have a ban on buying yourself stuff this time of year because people like to buy themselves things I have purchased for them for Christmas. So, so I need to get me a bowl bit. But basically, what I do is I carve out a pocket smaller than the size I actually need, and I hog that out. Here lately, I've been using my 1/2 inch diameter end mill quite a bit. And so 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch end mill, whatever. And then the actual pocket itself, uh, the correct size that I want, I'll just do a inside profile to that same depth with a, in my case, a ball nose. I want to get a bowl bit because they have a flatter bottom. It's not just a hemisphere. You've got a radius and then a flat area than the other radius, and it'll clear out more material and leave a smoother bottom than a standard ball nose. And it's one tool path instead of two. So, um, but those are the ways that I can think of. And the slowest way of all is a 3D model with a tapered ball nose, because that's going to go through and yeah, I don't, the less said about that, the better. 3D is always very, very slow. So and he says, okay, that's how I'm going about it, using a bowl bit for the perimeter. Yeah, I mean, it works. And I mean, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, just depending um, on the individual bit and how fast you want to push it or what have you. I mean, half-inch shank is going to be able to be more aggressive than a quarter-inch shank. And, but then you're into machine limitations and what have you. But if you're running a shop saber, you should be able to use half-inch shank bits. Okay. Tim Belt says, I'm making a serving tray. I wanted to have a circular pattern of pockets. I saw the circular pattern tool, but the pockets are not going as far out as I want. Using XY0 as the center, I want 8 pockets, 4 inches from the XY0. They keep going a lot closer than that. Okay. You're talking about a circular array. On the circular pattern, correct, Tim? Um, and yes, Colorado Working is going to use a half-inch shank. Okay. Yes. All right. On a circular array, let's get over here into a spire. Go back. Let me go ahead and delete all of these now just to save us confusion. And I'll get rid of that, and we'll change my job setup. I'll just go ahead and make this perfectly square. And okay. All right, now you want a series of round pockets. I'm not going to use your dimensions. I'll just kind of use my own, and that's good enough. And you want them you wanted how many of them? Let me go back over to your question here. You wanted 8 pockets, 4 inches away from XY0. Okay. Select it and go into circular array. Number of items is 8. Now, the rotation center is here. That's where it's going to copy that array around. The object size I have now is 2.6. Okay, total angle 360 degrees, meaning you want to start here with number 1 and then end up back here with number 8. Now, the thing about this is it is always going to calculate the position of these circles from the center of the circle. Okay? So if you want them 4 inches out, and let's see what you said. You said you didn't say how big of a the diameter of the pocket that you're making, but for let me close that for a second here. Let me go back to a size that's easy to work with here, and we'll make it 2.0. Apply, close. Okay, now I can go into circular array. Okay, so I have a 2-inch diameter circle. If I want the inside edge to be 4 inches away from this, what I'm going to have to do is figure out, because it's going to move the, it's going to copy this based on the center. I'm going to basically have to place the first one so that the bottom edge or the top edge, whichever you're wanting to place, is at that measurement, because it's going to, again, base it on the center. So let me close this here. You want a 4-inch circle. Let's go X0, and I'm doing this to illustrate what I'm talking about. 4.0. Hey, if I create a 4-inch circle, it's going to put the center of these circles on that 4-inch circle. But I know I have a 2-inch here. So if I take half of that, which would be the radius, and I make that which is 1 inch, I make that let's see, if I go with a 5-inch circle, that'll be a 1/2 inch larger. So I'll need to go 6-inch, create. And I bring this so that the center is right there. See how that puts that bottom edge right on that 4-inch circle. Now I can go into my circular array, a total of 8. Put the rotation center 0. Copy. And now I have 8 circles with the inside edge all touching that 4-inch circle. Now, did that just confuse the stuffings out of you? Basically, what I did was I took this circle plus the diameter of the circle that I'm going to use. Control Z to bring that back. That's where it's going to place the center of each of these copies. Did that make sense? Now, I know that's the radius of this circle, but I have a radius here and I have a radius here. That's why I added, take the distance you want from your center location and add the diameter of one pocket. And that will put the center of that one pocket far enough out to where your pocket edge touches that 4-inch diameter area that you want it to be in. Then I can take those two, delete, and there they go. There are your pockets. So, hey, Russ Tyndall, how are you doing, my friend? I got your email. I'm really trying to get back to you, but there's a bunch of stuff going on. Yes, we'll talk later. And thank you very much for the compliment. I know how I learn, and I am not the sharpest tool in the shed. So I know sometimes people get on me. All right, you said that. You explained it. You explained it. Move on. Well, I confuse myself. So, so yeah, Tim, I hope that helped out. Okay, yeah, that's almost exactly what you need. All right, terrific. Yes, Brooks Martin. He did. Russ Tyndall over at Blue Line Wood Flags did do an excellent video on CNC maintenance, and I, I see you're right 100% about so many things that you brought up in that video. I would add one. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if you mentioned it. Maybe you did, and I just forgot. But take a torque wrench with you and check your nuts and bolts. Check your fasteners. I know I get a lot of people say, Mark, why do you always about torque wrenches? You don't need torque wrenches. Tight enough is good enough. Well, true, but don't forget, these machines go through a lot of vibration, and it's a dynamic uh, it's a dynamic piece of equipment. That gantry is slinging a lot of weight around, and you've got pressure every time that bit plunges down. You've got pressure going up, and on those linear rails on the sides, and that Z moving back and forth, things can loosen up, and you can Loctite things to death. They can still loosen up given the wrong impact. Um, so check the fasteners. And I was in Army aviation, and you didn't go to the bathroom without a torque wrench. If you touched anything on that aircraft without a torque wrench, it was your hide. So I've got torque wrenches that, I mean, some of them are several years old. Deflecting beam, I've got them that ratchet. I've got the single click type. I mean, yes, I was a helicopter mechanic. So was my wife. That's how we met, when I ran over her with a helicopter. And so even if there isn't a listed torque value, I will go do some research and find a torque value. There have been times that I haven't, and it's come back to bite me. And I kind of did Avid CNC a disservice with my build videos, and I plan on rectifying that pretty soon, because I did not use a torque wrench when I put together my Avid CNC. And I didn't tighten fasteners down tight enough. So when you look at those first couple of assembly videos, it's a bit shaky. Well, it's a bit shaky because, plain and simply put, I didn't tighten the bolts enough. I know that because I did some research, found the torque value on the bolts, got out my torque wrench, and went through it, and I would say a third of them were torqued properly, and 2/3 were not. They were a bit loose. Now, I don't know if that was from me just not tightening them down enough from the get-go, or if that was a case of the vibration in use loosened them up. But yeah, I mean, just a going through with a torque wrench, tighten everything up, set it to the torque wrench set to the proper torque, that is, and go for the gusto. Um, Tighten them up. Okay, I think that's all of the questions, and it's perfect timing as well. We've been on for about an hour. Let's see here. John Lackey brings up a good point. Traveling every 6 months is good maintenance also. Doesn't hurt. Check the tram for sure. For sure. Tim Belt says good icebreaker, hit her with a Black Hawk or Chinook or something. No. I'll go ahead and tell the story. This is Inside Baseball. Basically, this is the end of the episode, folks. Now we're getting into BS, okay? But it's the holidays. What the heck, you know? We were both, her and I were both OH-58 mechanics. Those are the little observation scout helicopters. Gotcha, RB. I'll go back up and find your question. Little observation scout helicopters. And we were moving aircraft into the hangar. And she was there to visit a friend, and saw a whole bunch of us pushing a helicopter into the hangar. I was on the tail steering. She ran up and decided to help, and she grabbed hold of, right there on the tail end of the aircraft where it's painted on there, no push. She reached up, put her hands right on it, and one of the ground handling wheels went right up over her toe. Thankfully for her, it was the small aircraft, not one of the big heavy ones. Um, so, but after an icebreaker like that, yeah, we had words, and some of hers had more than 4 letters, but we've been basically together ever since. I'm trying to find your question, RB, and um, also fill in time so we don't have dead air. Oops, no, I see Peter Van Vliet has one as well. And let me go back up further. If you could ask your question again, RB, that would save me some hunting. I saw it had to do with guidelines. I can't find it. I see, Peter. I found your question, so we may go over a little bit. Trying to find RB because it was relevant. Okay, there we go. Can the guidelines be nudged other than using the cursor? No. Uh, about the only way to move around guidelines. Let me go back over here and we'll create a couple of guides. I'll drag one over to not quite the center and a vertical one to the center. About the only way is to click and drag. You can't select a guideline. And let me click off to make sure I don't have anything selected. I mean, even if I put my cursor over the guideline and use my cursor keys, they are not actually objects. So the only way to move a guideline is to click and drag it or right click and then use your positions. You can either move it to a new position. For instance, let's just say I want this moved a half inch to the right, which in this case would be a positive move. I could say plus 0.5 and click apply, and that's going to move that guide. Close this. That'll move that guide over. Or I can create another guide in an absolute position or relative to that guide and make it 0.5 plus in the positive, which will create a new guide parallel to it. But the only way to move a guide is to move it either with the cursor or go into the guideline menu. Now, Colorado Woodworking has a point here. I do wish Control Z applied to the guides. I do too, but I understand why it doesn't. It doesn't because a guideline isn't an object. It's not a vector. And that's why you have to right click on it and do all your editing within this form here to include new angles. Like I can set, let's go back for my 12.5-degree angle, click apply, and it'll angle that guide. But now I can't Control Z. All Control Z is going to do is undo the delete of those two round vectors there. So yeah, when you're looking at guides, all you can do is use the form or turn them off up here in the corner. That is a button. Or go up to View, Guidelines, and delete all guides or hide them. Now, I just did all of that. And if I go up here to edit, I can undo my array copy or redo my delete. And the keyboard shortcut for that, a lot of people don't know that. I just Control Z to bring these back. Now I want to Control Y to redo it. So, All right, let's go back up here. One more. I know we're going over. Peter Van Vliet says, how would you round over the top edge of a pocket or profile so that it doesn't have a sharp edge, other than using a separate router and round over bit? Let me make sure I don't have it here. Let me go grab it. And that is to get a point cutting round over bit. And of course, I need it and can't find it. That's not it. That's not it. You could use a molding toolpath. You could, if you have a spire, you could 3D model it. There it is. Okay. This is Whiteside model 1572 point cutting roundover bit. And it's 1/4" shank. Let me take it off of this. It's 1/4" shank, and that's what it looks like. Okay. And it's Whiteside model 1572. I will put a link to one in the description as soon as we're done live here. And the way I would do it is, let's go back into Aspire, a little bonus time here. And let's pocket, well, let's just pocket one of these out because otherwise it'll take forever. And we'll go 3/8 of an inch deep, and I'll use my 1/2 inch end mill just to make this a fast one here. And we'll preview that, and there is the pocket. Okay. Now, close that, and I'm going to take that exact same vector, do a profile toolpath with the point cutting roundover bit. This is a 1/4 inch. Okay. And Steve is absolutely right here. The point cutting roundover does have a tiny flat at the tip, very tiny flat. Okay. So, but it is a cutter. That's the main thing. It can plunge and cut. Okay. So I'm going to, because it's a 1/4 inch radius, I'm going to make my depth of cut 1/4 inch. Okay. Then I'm going to come select the, no, good grief. There's my 1/4 inch roundover bit right there. Select, and I'm going to use that roundover bit on the vector. That's the important part, on the vector. And we will go ahead and calculate that. Let me zoom in here so you can see it. I don't have the resolution turned up very well. Then I'm going to select that toolpath, and there you go. And that rounds that right over. And yes, you could 3D model it. Yes, you could use the molding toolpath. But if you have any experience with 3D modeling things like this or cutting with the molding toolpath, that profile took 46 seconds. I have yet to find any kind of a 3D carve that takes 46 seconds. And that, the only reason that took 46 seconds was because it took 4 passes to get to that depth. Yes, Peter. And welcome to CNC. Welcome to CNC. Let me turn that off, and let me go back into here, and we'll undo last to get rid of that roundover. Just as a little bonus here, let me go back into that toolpath, and I'm going to reduce this to 1/8 of an inch. And we'll, instead of using a a round over bit, let's use my 90-degree V bit. Select, and same thing, no other changes, just a change in depth and the change of bit. Instead of a round over, I now have a chamfer. So, I mean, lots of cheating, lots of ways of not so much gaming the system, but lots of ways of more than one way to skin the proverbial cat. So, we went way over, and hope it was worth it to you. I love doing these live Q&As, and you guys are the reason I do it. It's a lot of fun, but I notice that, and this is all 100% selfish. I notice I don't get as many views after the fact if I go more than about an hour. But what the heck. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. Let's see. Today is the 11th. I will be doing a live stream next week, the 18th. I will not, however, be doing a live stream on the 25th, Christmas Day. So I will not impose the mustache on you on the family holiday. Looking at it from this angle, it looks uneven. That's just my head. Never mind. So there will be a live Q&A next week. There will not be one on Christmas Day. I hope everybody gets to spend time with the people that are most important to them. Let's remember the reason for the season and be nice to one another. I mean, we should do that all the time, but especially this time of year, because we don't know somebody's story. We don't know what they're going through. So enough preaching. I'll get off me soapbox on that. Yeah, members. First of all, I wanted to say welcome aboard, Tim. Thank you for becoming a channel member. Channel members, members only live stream tomorrow evening at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. You will find the link in the community tab. Go to my main channel page, click on community, and the link is there. Not sure what we're going to talk about, but we will talk about something. You don't get to see what I got under the tree. You mean from me or for me? We'll see. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't have any pictures of the presents I made, but that could change. So members, I'll see you tomorrow. If you would like information on how to become a member, click the join button down there below or right next to the subscribe button, and a little excuse me, a little panel will pop up and a video will play, tell you all about channel membership. We have a real good crowd. We have a lot of fun. Yeah, we do some bantering back and forth, but I mean, there's always some good information that you guys share with me, and hopefully I pass on some good information to you. Anyway, I'll see you members then. Everybody else, I'll see you next Sunday. Until then, you got 2 weeks. It's getting to crunch time. Time to get them elves hopping. So go do something cool. Go make some chips, and I'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for everything. I appreciate it.